I would like to express my gratitude to the 2671 students who nominated me for the Teaching with Digital Technology Award. It's really gratifying to know that what I did was helpful. What I did was, right when they were sent home, the students still had a group of labs to do, which we call the rotating labs because there are 7 different experiments and normally each pair of students does 3. So there were 7 experiments that had to be ready to go remotely. And what made the most sense to me was recording them. And I did so March 16th, the day before MIT shut down for a while. Um, Interestingly, I actually really enjoyed recording them for the students because I felt I could convey what was so cool about the experiments. I could actually point out the most interesting things, the cool sensors, the neat way you can measure particular phenomena. And I was able to express that interest and passion about the experiments in a way that I can't in the written instructions. So normally they come to lab and they read some very detailed instructions and figure out how to set up the apparatus and make measurements, and often they don't actually have the time to think about what they're doing, to notice the really exciting things that they're doing, the wonderful measurements they can make because they're so busy trying to get it done in 3 hours. So 2671 is a very front-loaded class. The first few labs are what we call the learning objective labs, and this is where we give the students really the essential learning information and skills that they need to take measurements and do experiments. And it was important that those were in person. And if we do it remotely, I'll be sending stuff to students' homes, and they'll still be doing them themselves, even if they're not in lab. So the main focus of 2671 is the Go Forth and Measure project. And luckily, most students had some data on their project. They picked their projects, they had started taking data. They had not as much data as they would have liked, but enough data to actually get a project out of. And what was so nice was even in the remote environment, they really successfully completed their projects. They made a poster session. It wasn't obviously an in-person poster session. It was a Zoom poster session, and it was phenomenal to see them and some of their friends in Zoom with them as they discussed their projects. And in some sense, I felt that the remote semester made some of the mentoring on the Go Forth projects work a bit better because a one-on-one Zoom conference is very productive and has the advantage that the student can record the session so that if we talk and say something and they forget what we said, they can go back and look at it again, which is not what happens in person when they're meeting with us in the lab. We also, in some sense, had more time to talk with them, so I did a lot of individual Zoom sessions with students looking at their data, thinking about how to present it best, how to work on their projects. Talking to students about their data and their projects has always been my favorite part of the job. And that actually worked quite well remotely. Because, and in some sense, it was more challenging and therefore more rewarding when we saw a way through the data because many of them didn't really have enough data to really flesh out the whole parameter space. But we could take what they had and work with it, and they all made wonderful poster presentations. When everyone got sent home so quickly, I didn't want to add an extra burden to them, so I basically, instead of making the labs have to be done synchronously, I just said, okay, by Friday of this week, you need to submit the pre-lab and the lab worksheet. And you can do it whenever you like. And I didn't insist that they do it with their lab partner or a lab partner because I felt like that would be an extra burden on them given how challenging they were finding it to do things in they're often in their home environment, or if they weren't home, in whatever environment they were in, which was a lot harder for them to work than MIT. So I, as well as all the other instructors I know, we really tried to lessen the expectations. In 2671, Dr. Wendell saw immediately that, okay, we needed to make the rest of the lectures not required, still useful, and some students came and saw some nice talks from other people about ways you can use instrument measurement and instrumentation. But just taking that load off them of having to go to 3 hours of lecture and 3 hours of lab at specific times really helped, especially for our student in Hawaii and our other student in Greece. In terms of the recordings of the experiments, the impression I got that I was able to convey the most interesting and most important parts of the experiments to the students by recording myself doing them. When we go back to being in person, I'm going to have to brainstorm a lot to think about how I can get that interest and that passion into an experiment where they are doing it themselves. So there's obviously some time they have to take to set things up. And I will be thinking about that and possibly including some movies of how to set things up instead of written directions. I think that might work. And so even when they're back in lab, it might be a hybrid of digital combined with in-person information. For future remote things, yes, the one thing is I think the digital learning is great. And I think we need to also make sure we ensure a sense of community. So in 671, we have peer review sessions, and some of those, the ones for the draft poster, were all by Zoom with WRAP instructors, so the communication instructors, and those went amazingly well. So we were able to preserve some of the community of 671 with peer review sessions, and Dr. Wendell did a Monday musings and then was available synchronously during lecture for people who wanted to have a discussion with her. And I think that was very helpful. The thing that I wish I had done but didn't, which was to try to insist that students do the experiments with a partner. So definitely I will be working on that for the next remote iteration, probably in the fall. So to sum up, I'm just so honored and so grateful to the students who nominated me, and so glad that what I did was effective to them, felt effective to them and helpful to them, and that they had a good semester in 2671, even though it ended in a remote way. So thank you very much.